Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we're recording a podcast outside, so of course, as soon as we hit the button, birds immediately flew over and started making noises that they were not making. We were just recorded a different podcast, and it was silent.
Yeah.
Now immediately a bird flies over and says, "Oh, it must be Buckeye Weekly time."
Yeah, they're just sitting in the tree. Maybe we were threatening its babies. I don't know. Although at this point, it's no longer spring,
Yeah.
so I don't want to hear the baby talk. Like, these are grown birds. Enough with the annoying cawing. And also now it's going to get louder because this is our brand. This is what we do, and I am here for it, and so are you. So thank you guys for joining us. This is our weekend recap of the biggest games in the college football season of the week, and what you said before the show, 8 of the top 20 teams lost this weekend, and that's you get one of those shakeups every now and again, and this is one of those. We knew coming in that there was a bunch of games that were going to cause some of these issues, and we saw it. And now you've got teams that are rising, you've got teams that are falling, and as long as you've got a couple teams that just keep minding their own business, they will just sneak around on and sneak up, and I'm going to shoot this bird. But it was one of those weekends that you get a few of them every year where things really start to settle out. Teams start to look really good, and you say, okay, I know who this team is now. I know these guys were jokers, and we saw that this weekend.
Speaking of shooting birds, it was a duck hunt this weekend. Number 3, Oregon, the first of the top 20 teams to lose. Number 8, Arkansas. Number 9, Notre Dame. Number 10, Florida. Number 12, Ole Miss. Number 15, Texas A&M. Number 18, Fresno State. Number 20, UCLA. 8 of the top 20. And you're right. I mean, this is sort of the point of the season where you start to really understand what you've seen earlier. And, this was a result that mattered. This was a crazy outlier that you're going to look back on and go, wait, how did that happen? We always, after week 1, we told you, don't overreact to week 1. And after week 2, after Ohio State lost, we said, don't write this team off. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of talent on this team. You're seeing it kind of come together for Ohio State, and you're seeing other teams where it's sort of coming together. It seems like Penn State is sort of figuring things out. It seems like Iowa has figured things out. It seems like Georgia and Alabama very much have all of the answers. Georgia and Alabama have somehow gotten the teacher's edition of the textbook, and they have all the answers. But, Arkansas was like, well, they beat Texas, so they must be really good. I wonder, are they good enough to? No. Notre Dame was kind of like farting around against all these teams, and it was like, are they going to be able to do this? No. Decisively no. Florida, no. Ole Miss, like, oh, you saw the Matt Corral, Lane Kiffin. I saw, one of those like puff pieces on like, oh, this is the perfect marriage of quarterback and no, it's 40. Bad news, friends. It's 42-7 in the third quarter.
Yeah, it was a 79-point over/under, and Alabama had no intention of letting Ole Miss even get into that.
Texas A&M. No, like Texas A&M before the season was like, oh, maybe this. No, Texas A&M has lost 2 games in a row and has less offense than Rutgers at this point. It's remarkable. Fresno State was the feel-good. Nope. Just lost to Hawaii late on Saturday night. And UCLA has this signature win over LSU. Like, oh man, this is it. Chip Kelly finally. Nope. Just got clobbered at home by Arizona State.
Yeah, it's. We know it's been a weird season. I don't know that these results are necessarily weird. It's just part of not having as much talent as everybody else. And sometimes when you face evenly matched teams, or even teams that are a little bit less talented than you, we see it all the time where these teams have to bring it every week or else they're going to lose. And some weeks they don't. And you can lose by 1 or you can lose by 30. And it's just like, how does this happen? Well, it's college football. And that's the accurate answer in all of this. Well, it's college football. That's what happens. And that's why it's fun. And that's why we all watch it. Because even though you think you know generally what's going to happen, so much of the time you're wrong, unless, of course, it is Alabama, who at this point, and I want to run through the games in kind of in the order that they happened, but just to discuss Alabama for a second. The defense is picking up. we've had some issues with their running game. Brian Robinson rushed for like 171 yards, but did it by only averaging like 4.8 yards per carry. They were just, just really consistent. So they're rounding into form. Georgia, they did this against Arkansas, and I think they had like 340 yards of total offense still. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. Their teams, Arkansas, it turns out, was fake good because they struggled to beat Texas A&M, who isn't even fake good. They're just bad. And so I think Arkansas was the beneficiary of, one, SEC West, being undefeated. So right there, boom, you are elevated. That's like being the son of a CEO and starting out way above the mailroom. Like, you're a junior executive, and it's like he's 11 years old. But now you're just starting to see the reality set in for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and there is, to go back to a point you made earlier, the talent level is what gives you the margin for error. Like a team like Arkansas, just I don't think they have any 5-star recruits on that team. So you've got to be pretty much perfect every week. I mean, UCLA is kind of the same way. You have to be. You can't have a week where you sort of sleepwalk and your talent can just kind of coast you through. Ohio State is a team where they can kind of sleepwalk, and outside of really good teams, their talent can kind of pull them through. They haven't lost to a bad team since 2018. So that's something that is a benefit that Ohio State has. Alabama can kind of have a slow start and then just turn on the jets and go. Georgia's winning with 340 yards of total offense and crushing teams because their defense is otherworldly. And when you kick it off to the 25 and then the other team goes backwards 7 yards and has to punt, the offense doesn't have to go very far. Hey, the defense converts a pick six as they did against Clemson. Yeah, I mean, Georgia's defense against Alabama's offensive line, Ohio State's offensive line, like that, those are going to be interesting matchups if you see those later in the year. I don't think Georgia's defense against like Cincinnati's offensive line is going to work out real well for Cincinnati, but that is a team where you have just such elite players that you can not have a good offense and you can still win games comfortably, because if the other team is scoring -7 points, well, that's pretty easy to beat.
One of those instances, it was the Friday night game, Iowa and Maryland, where Talia Tagovailoa threw 5 interceptions. There are also some, I think, other turnovers there for Maryland, maybe a fumble kickoff. And Iowa had touchdown drives of like 6, 12, all of these short yardage drives where I don't think they put up a ton of yards either. But again, when you're only playing half a field, you don't have to. And this was just one of those games where we were excited to see it, and then right away, even before we got to start watching it, it was already almost over in terms of the domination and the ongoing mistakes by Maryland. And this was what some of the expectations were for Maryland. At some point, and I jokingly said before the season, like, obviously Talia Tagovailoa is going to get hurt. That's what happens with Maryland quarterbacks, and he probably won't even face Ohio State. But then that looks like it's going to happen. He will be facing Ohio State, but he has collapsed in a new way with these interceptions. And he came into this game with 1 interception and now has 6, and you just wonder the ramifications of that for him moving forward. But Iowa is now going to be the number 4 team in the nation, and good for them. But there's going to be a lot of ugly wins along the way for them. But hey, wins are wins.
Right, exactly, and that's the thing. That's what good Iowa seasons look like. There's the Iowa season, and that's 8-4, and then there's the good Iowa season, and that's like 11-1. But it's like, well, yes, but the wins aren't pretty. Yes, but see the 11 on the left side of the hyphen, like that's the important part there. Yeah, that was just to give you a sense, and we use this every once in a while, expected points added. The EPA for that game, Iowa was at +10, so like they were effective and they were scoring, and Maryland -19.67. So Maryland scored 19.67 fewer points, basically 20 fewer points less than you would have expected based on where they had the ball, game state, situation, all that kind of stuff. If you turn the ball over, like, yes, that is what is going to happen. Because the yards per play were 5.9 to 5.2. It was a fairly even game, except if you turn the ball over 5 times and you give the other team extremely short fields. Like, this is a very mathy way to say, like, don't turn the ball over and give the other team short fields, which is something I think we all sort of intuitively know. It also, to me, means that Maryland-Ohio State game next weekend might be a little more interesting. Don't look at that final score and go like, no. They're terrible. They give up 50 points to Iowa. Like, that's not, I think, necessarily a true representation of what that Maryland team is. They're not fantastic, but there's talent there. And if Ohio State isn't able to force those turnovers, or isn't just gifted those turnovers, that then maybe is a little bit more of a competitive game.
Maryland losing receiver Dante Demas there was not good for them, obviously. But I am interested to see how the Ohio State secondary holds up against the Maryland passing attack. The secondary continues to look really good for the Buckeyes as things fall into form. Tom, real quick on Georgia, have you seen Stetson Bennett's line? Georgia quarterback started this week.
I have not, but I think it was. I think I saw something at one point, and it was like he threw 6 passes for 37 yards or something like that.
Yeah, he finished 7 of 11 for 72 yards. Georgia was 72 yards passing in the game, and they could do that because they rushed for 273 yards on 56 carries. Just consistent, churning, long carry of 24 yards. So there's no big explosive. It was just like, we're just going to keep the ball. I don't even know what the time of possession was. I'm guessing probably near 40. So let me take a look. Drum roll, please.
While you're looking up the meaningless
36-32.
While you're looking up the meaningless stat, I'll give you the meaningful stat, which is total EPA. Georgia plus 14. Okay, that means where they got the ball, they did a little bit more with it than you would have expected. 2 touchdowns better there. Arkansas minus 24.69. I mean, that is, you're getting the ball, even when you're getting the ball in good field position and you should be scoring, you're not scoring anything. And I mean, you get shut out. Like, yes, that's going to be an ugly number, but 24 is a huge number. And that's a testament to just like, you're just getting whipped on both sides, both offensive lines. That's just what that is. And again, we've had this conversation on one of these shows at some point before, but it's like, all of the years that you've heard people talk about the SEC needs to get 2 teams in the playoff. This is the first time it's like, yeah, okay, I can actually see it this year. All the years that they're gassing up, Florida, Jim McElwain Florida teams, like, no, they're just hitting their stride. No, in fact, they are not hitting their stride. So this is a year that you can kind of go, like, especially with the ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, all looking like, this feels like a year that you're gonna have 2 SEC teams in.
Yeah, let's talk about Michigan, Wisconsin while discussing some ugliness. Michigan wins 38-17. Cade McNamara, here's the thing. The last 2 games, Michigan has not been able to run the ball, but they've thrown it well enough to win. That has been the question. Can they do that? And they were able to do it here. Also, Michigan played, they played 3 quarterbacks because it was such a blowout. I guarantee you, nobody, what's the line on them playing 3 quarterbacks at Wisconsin, other than guys getting benched? But yeah, JJ McCarthy got in, threw a touchdown pass to Dalen Baldwin for 56 yards. Still didn't run the ball, as I said. 44 carries, 112 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. This is the second week in a row. Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum have been essentially shut down. But again, they're doing well enough to keep moving the chains. Jim Harbaugh using the 4th down as an offensive down as well. I believe they're 4 for 5 in this game, rather than using it as a turn to punt. I mean, if you've got 5 4th downs, or no, obviously they had more than that, but just continuing to stay aggressive. And Tom, if you average 2.5 yards per rush, you can keep the ball. I mean, it's never going to be pretty, and we know the Michigan offense has not been pretty in a very long time, but it's effective right now. I don't think it's not a world beater, and because clearly you can stop the run. I think a certain defense, perhaps Ohio State's defense, can also handle the passing game as well.
Yeah, and that's, does Michigan have the offensive skill talent with Ronnie Bell out to take, to attack Ohio State downfield? I would submit that they probably do not. I don't know that they have the quarterback to attack Ohio State downfield. The Michigan going for it on 4th down, like, first of all, good for Jim Harbaugh for, like, this is someone who has recognized that he was a dinosaur and needed to adapt, and he has now adapted. He is now playing. He's now doing what you should do, what the numbers say you should do. And to your point, that changes how you call plays on 1st and 2nd and 3rd down too. That's one of the lessons of Service Academy football is Army is always right at the top of the list of teams that go for it the most on 4th down, because they have an offense that is run that A gap, run that A back right up the middle, the fullback, and just run that fullback dive, and you're going to get 3 yards. And it's not pretty, and it's not, it's not like visually entertaining. It's never going to be the Sports Center top 10 play, but guess what? The chains move again, because if it's 3rd and 2, you can run the ball. You are very good at this one thing you do. Michigan has not been running the ball very consistently, but with Hassan Haskins, they've got a back that can pick up that 2 yards if you need to pick it up. Like 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Give it to Hassan Haskins, and he's not going to convert 100% of them, but he's going to convert an awful lot of them. And at that point, that changes everything you're doing the rest of the game, and it kind of puts the defense on its skates a little bit, because then that gives you so many more options in all those previous downs.
And I was just looking through the play-by-play for Michigan. On 2 of those drives where they went for it on 4th down, they finished with a touchdown. Mm-hmm. So that's 14 points right there that they scored because they chose to go for it on 4th down and keep the ball. And that also builds confidence within a team, and it gets their juices going, and it just allows them to think they can do more than maybe they can. But again, if you get 4 downs to do it, you can, as long as it's you're doing it within reason and not doing it like some loon at Presbyterian. No offense, Tom, but
you bite your tongue.
I mean, you saw the score a couple weeks ago, and it was like 72-0 or whatever.
Well, that was Campbell, so you don't just walk into the Campbell's house, sir.
What is their stadium name?
The Campbell's house. I just told you.
Wow, couldn't even get a sponsor, unless it's sponsored by
Campbell Cigarettes.
Campbell Cigarettes. So good for them. Good for them on having a great sponsor. I completely lost my place here, but have we talked about Oregon losing?
We have not.
Oregon lost 31-24. It felt like just a matter of time. As we talked about last week, they struggled a little bit against Arizona before closing strong and making the score look much different than the game was. This one was an overtime loss. I didn't see it until after the fact in terms of, I know they were down like 14-0 or 17-3 or something like that, and nobody should be surprised by this. Anthony Brown throws for 186 yards. Oregon rushes for 228, but still, it's when you are, not fake good, but when you don't have a bunch more talent than anybody else. And Stanford has been playing better as the season gone on. They started out slowly with the Kansas State loss, but they've been getting better. And funnily enough, Tom, if you're just disciplined enough to handle Oregon's offense, which isn't what it used to be in terms of all of the stuff they do, but if you're just not shooting yourself in the foot or chopping off your own legs or stabbing yourself in the chest defensively, maybe this offense isn't so difficult to stop.
Well, I mean, in fairness, when Ohio State's defense was playing Oregon, they were only doing one thing, so they would not have been doing all of those different things. They would have just been stabbing themselves in the chest. Just even last week, you looked at what Ohio State looked like against Akron, and with the stipulation, yes, it was just Akron. And you looked at how Oregon had played after that, and it was like, I wonder if Ohio State played Oregon, how many touchdowns Ohio State would beat Oregon by now? Because, you look at the games on Saturday, and it's like, yeah, I think that if somehow Ohio State and Oregon met in the playoff, like that might just be, Ohio State by 3 touchdowns kind of game. I think Oregon caught Ohio State at exactly the right time. Oregon's kind of the anti-Michigan here, where Michigan, you can kind of feel Michigan fans going, why can't we ever play Ohio State in September? Oregon got Ohio State week 2 before Ohio State had figured out coaching issues, scheme issues, personnel issues. Now it sort of feels like they've gotten some of them figured out. And this is not the 85 Bears. This is not the 2021 Georgia defense, but it's a competent defense for Ohio State. Oregon is, they are what they are. Like they're a good team, but they're not an elite team.
Right.
And maybe Mario Cristobal can get them there at some point as the recruiting continues to improve, but they're not there yet. And again, you don't have the margin for, if you have Alabama talent and you're kind of farting around against Stanford, eventually you can hit the gas and go. Oregon just doesn't have the talent to be able to have that kind of a margin for error. The win probability graph for this game was fascinating. It looks like a W. It's just, it goes very way down to Oregon, then spikes up to Stanford in the middle, then way back down to Oregon, and then right at the end goes from basically Oregon was 99% up to Stanford 100%. Like, oh, that was quite a swing.
I think a lot of teams other than, including Oregon, could have beaten Ohio State in week 2. And they were just the fortunate team that was there to do it. And so kudos to them. Tom, Notre Dame loses to Cincinnati 24-13. I think the game was 17-0 at one point.
Into the second half, it was
Yeah,
17-0.
Jack Cohn again gets benched, I believe, and really to have the quarterback situation that Notre Dame does at this point with an established Brian Kelly having been there forever, they never really have. The recruiting of quarterbacks at Notre Dame for Brian Kelly has not been outstanding, and having to rely on a guy who Wisconsin benched as your guy and nobody could beat him out. And you're seeing the byproduct of that now as he's probably been benched, maybe for good. We'll see. I don't know. But neither 386 total yards for Cincinnati, 341 for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's offense has just not been good all season long, struggling to run the ball, struggling to throw the ball. They finally lose. They're done. We can stop talking about them. Don't have to worry about them anymore. Cincinnati, however, may not be out of the picture for a while now.
If Cincinnati, unless Cincinnati blows this, I mean, Cincinnati is going to be the first team, I think, from a non-Power 5 conference to make the college football playoff. You know, they are in the spot that Houston was when Tom Herman was at Houston, where they had who'd they play? They played like Louisville week 1 and then Oklahoma week 2, or vice versa, and they had a couple like, oh, that's a good Power 5 conference win, and then all you have to do is just get through the, and then. They lost to. Did they lose to UConn? They lost to someone real
I think
dumb.
So, yes.
They lost to someone real dumb and ended up finishing like 10-2. And I think they had. I think a quarterback got hurt or something. But it's like, again, this goes back to the margin for error conversation. If Desmond Ridder goes down, that maybe changes some things for Cincinnati. They need to stay healthy, and they just need to handle their business. If they handle their business from here on out, there really isn't a compelling case to leave them out of the college football playoff. Because you've got a couple wins now that are good wins, and Indiana does not look like as a resume bullet. Indiana does not look like what we thought they were going to look like at the beginning of the season, but it's still a Big Ten win. You won on the road. It was a comeback win. It was kind of an impressive game. You beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame is not last year's Notre Dame, but they're fine. But that's enough. I mean, sort of, we as a college football society have sort of agreed, like, if you have the one good year, then the second year you get the benefit of the doubt. If you beat year 2, like that seems like that's sort of where things stand. And Cincinnati has so far held up their end of the bargain. If they keep winning, like, it seems like they should be in.
I think you have to win the right way, though.
Well,
you can't be 20-17 every week.
You can't beat East Carolina by 3
You
points.
have to look like. You have to look like one of the top 4 teams in the country, and if you are one of the top 4 teams in the country playing in the AAC, you should be winning by 3 touchdowns every single week, even against the really good teams. If you are that good, you should be establishing your dominance week in and week out. Yeah, every conference, every season in conference, there's going to be a difficult game where championship teams come through and they win that. But overall, they should by far be the most dominant team in that conference. And if they aren't, that is going to provide the type of argument, the crack in the argument that the committee may need, Ryan Day may need, Lincoln Riley, whoever, for a one-loss team to be like, look what we've done. Look at all the teams we've beaten. Who have they beaten? 2 teams from Indiana that can't get out of their own way. Like, you shouldn't. What about, we beat teams from all over the nation, not just Indiana.
Yeah, well, and if Ohio State goes into Indiana and beats Indiana by 4 touchdowns, well, then that becomes a data point that works against Cincinnati. I think as you're saying that, I was kind of thinking back to a lot of those Boise State teams where they would just kill people, but they would always find the banana peel. Like, they never actually made it through the season. There was always that Nevada game. There was always that one game that just took them out. But you have to win like Boise State wins, where it's just like, Cincinnati is now in the part of the schedule where no one's going to pay any attention to them, and it's just all you're going to see the highlights on at halftime of the primetime game. Cincinnati needs a lot of those to be the Boise State one, where it's like, here's the 80-yard touchdown, and then the score goes up, and it's 63-6. Like, that's what. And if Cincinnati does that, then they've done their job. If it's hey, this is a wild back and forth affair, and it turned, and they beat SMU 20-17. Like that you sort of open yourself up a little bit.
Also, watch how the networks frame what Cincinnati does. If it's do they say they struggled, or do they say it was a hard-fought win? And just trying to frame the conversation. Like, does one network, would it behoove them to have Cincinnati in the playoffs? Is there a network where it would behoove them to not have, like, say, a second SEC team and a partner like ESPN? How do they frame the Cincinnati Bearcats the rest of the season? Will be interesting to watch. Oklahoma 37-31 over Kansas State. This is more high scoring than I thought it would be. At some point, you Buckeye fans need to be hoping Oklahoma loses. It feels like that's not going to happen. It feels like almost an inevitability at this point, because I don't know that Oklahoma is finding ways to win at this point. Maybe just finding ways not to lose, and having opponents who, at the end, here you go, or just they haven't played the toughest schedule at this point. They have not looked good doing it. They have been there for the taking. Nebraska had an opportunity, just couldn't get it done. At some point, you keep playing with fire like this, obviously the cliche, you will no longer have fun playing with fire.
Yes, I remember my grandmother had a cross stitch on the wall.
It's fun now, but it's not always going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, they get outgained on a yards per play basis, 7.04 to 6.22, like almost 3/4 of a yards per play. This is one that I was on for weeks. Like, hey, watch out for Kansas State. Watch out for Kansas State. They almost did it. Oklahoma just doesn't, in the same way that Ohio State didn't look like Ohio State until Rutgers game. Oklahoma just doesn't look like Oklahoma right now.
No, and I said like a couple weeks ago, like, you're just expecting Oklahoma to become this, finally realize themselves, and maybe this is who they are. And if this is who they are, eventually, but I say eventually they're going to lose. But they've got Texas next week in Dallas. They still have Oklahoma State. They still have TCU, I believe. They still have Iowa State at the end of the season, with Oklahoma State followed there. So there's enough there to trip them up. But also, they don't always need a top 15 team to trip them up. And so any type of loss, I think, will knock them out, just because of the grossness of their wins this year.
Yeah, the Big 12 is not real top heavy this year, but it's deep. It's a league where you can't, you're gonna be favored every week if you're in Oklahoma, but you're not gonna be favored by 21 points. You're gonna be favored by 10 points, 14 points. You have to, you have to come to play every week league. You don't necessarily, outside of Kansas, you don't really have an off week there, but you're also more talented than everyone else. So you should be winning these games, but you should be winning these games by more points than you are. And at some point, that's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, Kentucky moves to 5-0 with the win over Florida, helped by I believe a blocked punt there at the end. We don't need to spend too much time on that, because again, at some point Kentucky's going to lose. They will play Georgia,
right.
So that will end their season, and it will end their season with extreme prejudice. And so just look forward to that. Oklahoma State remains undefeated with a 24-14 win over Baylor. Again, another one, Wake Forest type of thing, where eventually Oklahoma State is going to be tripped up. Even when they were good and ranked like number 2, it never, like in past seasons, like, don't worry, something crazy will happen, because it is Oklahoma. Penn State time. We can spend a little bit of time on Penn State as we close out here. 24-0 over Indiana, and really just, it was 14-0 in first half, late in the first half, maybe even in the third quarter, and it felt like it could have been 42-0. There's nothing that Indiana could do. They can't run the ball. They can't throw it. Penix, I don't know if he got hurt or if he
did get hurt.
Jack Tuttle came in, wasn't any better. The inability of Indiana to run the ball this year has been devastating for them, but the inability of Michael Penix to regain his form from last year in his good games, because he was also, he's an inconsistent guy, but he showed flashes of what he could do. So you thought, you know what, maybe that's what he's going to be this year. That has not been the case. Indiana's defense still pretty good. They keep themselves in it, but Penn State just way too much. Sean Clifford is playing better each week. He's getting better. They still can't, as I say, they're having issues running the ball, but they did rush for 209 yards against a good Indiana defense. So that is another positive sign. Penn State, when you guys are listening to this or watching this, probably number 3 in the country.
Yeah, and you can't really argue with it.
No.
I mean, they've put together a solid resume right now. They look good. We'll see what happens when they head to Iowa City. I still think they get tripped up in Iowa City, but I mean, we've talked a little bit about EPA on this show. Tony, what was Indiana's offensive EPA? I'm going to give you a hint. It starts with a minus.
Probably like 17 or 20.
Minus 31.97. That's not strictly speaking good. It is not strictly speaking what you want.
Right.
That's real bad. Indiana looks lost, and I think Tom Allen is just like desperate for anything to feel good about right now. They were down 21-0 late in the third quarter, had 4th and 6 inside the 10, and he kicks a field goal, and it's like, and it gets blocked or he missed it.
It was blocked.
Yeah. You're down 21 points. If you're playing to win the game, you go for it there, because you're down 3 scores. Kicking a field goal, even if you make it, you're still down 3 scores, and there's a minute left in the third quarter, and there's how many possessions are you going to get? And now suddenly you're going to get 3 possessions, you can score 3 touchdowns. You play to win, or you play. I mean, the love each other thing was cute last year when it was working. That was like a very feelings ball call. Like, I just want our team to feel like they had some success. Like, what are you doing?
To me, that's a selfish coaching call, because you're like, well, I just don't want to be shut out right now. I want to have some sort of a positivity thing, and it's not a positivity thing. It's just I don't think we can do this, or I'm not willing to attempt to go for it. And it would look better if it's 21-3 rather than 21-0 or 20-0 or whatever. And it's selfish, because you're no longer, as the coach, you are no longer trying to win. You are just trying to keep up appearances at that point, and you deserve to have that kick blocked 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of our previous trips to Rutgers, 2017, when it was Ohio State's up 49-0 or 52-0 or something, and Chris Ash lines up to try and kick a field goal with like 10 seconds left in the game, just like, well, we want to get on the board. And so they're driving the field against Ohio State's third team defense, and they get into field goal range, like, oh, let's get the field goal just so we don't get shut out. And they doinked it. It was like, that was football telling you, like, no, you have chosen poorly.
The only thing better after that doink is if they would have fired the cannon. Close enough. We hit the goalpost.
Yeah.
Boom. Anything else, Tom, before we get out of here?
No, I think we've covered what was a really fun week of college football. This is one of the upsides of, like, there aren't many great teams this year, so you're going to have a lot of weeks where it's like, hey, how did all these ranked teams lose? Like, it feels like outside of the top couple teams, and maybe you're getting Ohio State back in that conversation now, there's a lot of volatility here. And with the return of all these super seniors and all that, like, you've got some of the lower level teams, the Rutgers and Marylands and Michigans of the world are better now than they would be in a typical year.
Yeah, it's going to create. This will not be the last week like this.
No,
I don't think so. That'll make for a fun rest of the season. So, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can find us at BuckeyeScoop.com. If you are not yet a member, become a member. Join us on the Ask the Insiders message board. Check out all the premium content there from a number of contributors like Bill Green, Alex Gleitman, Mark Givler, Dominic Smith, Mick Walker, Ross Fulton, tons of stuff like that. So check that out. If you are a member, obviously, thank you very much for that. We will continue to thank you for that. So find us at youtube.com, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop for videos like this, live streams after the games, live streams of interviews, all of that stuff. You know that now. Just if you're watching this right now, click the bell. There'll probably be an icon after the video.
Yes, we'll have a little Buckeye Scoop circular logo on the right-hand side of the screen towards the end of this video, probably right about now. And you click on that, that'll subscribe you as well.
Perfect. So thank you guys, and we will talk to you later.